Hey, good morning, guys. It's Jamie. It is September 9th, Friday, 2022. I'm just driving in a little bit of traffic, and I wanted to take a minute to talk about some of the recent price action in the stock market and some of my thoughts. Again, this is not financial advice. I'm just a middle-aged dad, investor that trades stocks, options, cryptocurrencies, and invests in real estate, and himself with a couple friends and family members. So I opened a position a couple weeks ago with Coinbase, and I'm going to use Coinbase as the top of this conversation, not because Coinbase is really that relevant or important, because across the board stocks have have had some amazing volatility with all the fear in the marketplace with rising rates, the stuff in China, stuff going on in Germany and Ukraine, and energy crisis with the war in Russia and Ukraine, like all the different factors that are affecting the market. And a lot of the news that I hear in different news reports, podcasts, YouTube channels, just again, the sentiment out there is that we are probably heading towards, already, I mean, it sounds like we're already kind of touching upon it, but the worst recession we have ever seen. Now, what do I know? I'm telling you what I've been hearing. That could be completely wrong, but a lot of the people that I find credible across the board are saying the same thing. So if that is the case, if an old salty fisherman tells me before I get in a boat, it looks like we're in for a rough storm, and the guy's been in the water for 40, 50 years, I probably would take heed to the old fisherman's advice and say, all right, well, maybe I should make sure I have a life jacket and that I'm prepared if things don't go well on this boat. So I don't know where your money is. I like the idea of diversification, but as I invest in different things, I do my best to have diversity. And what I mean by that is, my friend the other day was asking me, Vincenzo, which you might have seen before, about, he was asking me about, we were talking about Coinbase, so I'm going to get back into that in a minute. He's like, should I sell? Should I buy? He was just asking me what I thought. And I was like, I can give you my opinion. I go, but if you have all your money in one stock, whether it goes up or down, it's like you're basing everything on one company. You're all in, right, so to speak. Now, the sun's in my eyes. I'm not trying to be cool here. These are very cheap gas station sunglasses, by the way. I told him that if he was to fall back in my arms, if you guys ever did any kind of church stuff, there's this thing called the faith fall. And what you do is you'd fall back into the person's arms. They'd say, trust me, and you'd go like this, and you'd fall back and they'd catch you. And it was like, it was the fear on the way down. Now, you have to believe that the person was strong enough to catch you. And also, if there was like a group of these kids, I did this when I was in high school, there was like a youth group. There would be like 3 or 4, right? And I felt much more comfortable knowing that there was 3 or 4 people that could catch me versus just one person, unless it was like my football coach was a big guy, he was able to do it. So you have to have confidence that when you fall back, you're able to land safely. So if you have multiple hands, in the same token of if you have different stocks, right, different sectors, and different risk level, right? I think what's his name? Kevin O'Leary, Mr. Wonderful, was talking about never invest more than 20% in one sector. I thought that was pretty good advice, and not more than 5% in one stock. So whatever rule you follow, basically, if you're kind of spread out, precious metals, if you're into gold and silver, if you're into real estate, if you're into Google and Amazon and Tesla and Coca-Cola and different companies, even though they all might be affected, it may be a little more stable if you have some diversity. So what happened with my Coinbase price action, which I'm going to talk about, I had sold a put option, which means that if by expiration it wasn't over my strike price, I'd be assigned the shares. So I got assigned 100 shares at $90 a share, and it was down to 80 something bucks. And though I collected a premium, I always keep the premiums separate, like a separate account inside the account. In this case, it's Robinhood. Now, I think it was around just under $400 if I remember correctly. So I got the $400, but now let's say I went to 80 bucks instead of 90. It wasn't 80, but it was somewhere in the 80s. So now I'm down $1,000, in value to what I own the shares for. I mean, granted, I got the $400 in premium, but I still own the shares for what I own the shares. It doesn't kind of roll over that amount into the share price. It's just a separate account. So now what do? And there's different outcomes and strategies you can do. For me, I thought, you know what, I'll buy more shares because I'll bring my cost average down, and I think it will go back up. BlackRock bought into them for a reason, the biggest asset management company in the world, $9 trillion. I figured, hey, there's got to be a reason they did that, even though with all the volatility. Let me see if I can, get back out of this. And if anything, I'll sell some more covered calls along the way. Well, what happened over the past few weeks is it continued to take legs down lower and lower. So it went basically from 90 all the way down to 61, right? So that's almost $30 in 2 weeks. And I don't know what the actual percentage is, but it's pretty hefty, right? So I was like, I don't want to keep buying more shares. You keep buying shares. I'm going to average down. And that can sometimes, if not more, oftentimes work out and not work out for you and be a bad thing. So I just kind of said, okay, I own them for $78 a share, and it's at 60 in the 60s, and it may possibly go back down to the 40 range. And I did a little poking around, and it's a good possibility. Now, I posted a video and a picture of a chart that I drew, and I'm not a technical analyst expert, but you can go back and check. I said, I'm betting that it goes up. I'm betting that it goes back up to, in the channel going up. I think it's going to bounce off the bottom of the channel there, maybe fall through a little bit. If it doesn't hold at the 61, it's going down, unfortunately. And I would probably reevaluate my strategy at that point. But right now, I'm like, I think it's going to go back up to 60. It hits the 61. I think it could very well, go up back towards that 80, 90 range, because that's how the channel looks in the chart. So in the meantime, if you're selling weekly, monthly, or even annual covered calls, you can collect a premium. But granted, if you set it out a month or a year, I mean, the only way you're going to really benefit from that is if it expires worthless, right? For the other person. So in other words, if I sell you a premium and you're willing to pay me $2,000 for my 100 shares for one contract, which is one of the contracts I sold, it was like $2,500. Now I collected that money, but I have to sit on that contract and either wait for the contract to expire, either where it expires and it doesn't hit the price target and I keep the money, right? Or it hits the price target, I lose my shares at whatever the price is, whether it's $70, $80, $100, and it doesn't matter what I own it for, because I could always average, I could still buy more shares if I want along the way. So that doesn't really matter unless, the shares go to $40, right? And I collected my $2,500, but if I own it for $78, I'm still going to take a big, a loss when that happens. And plus, I'm tying up money for a year that I could be flipping and doing other things with. So that's not the best strategy. But if in that time frame, the $2,500 premium in this case that I collected, if the contract then is selling for $100, I'll just give you an example, and that happens all the time. It goes from whatever the number is, in this case $2,500 for a year out contract, that someone paid for, if it comes down to 100, that's to my benefit, because I could free up my shares. Or if it comes to 500 or whatever the number is, or I'm like, hey, I made a profit, right? I have to buy the contract back for $500 or $100 or $1,000. I'm still up $1,000, $1,500, depending on how below that premium was that I collected. So I like that. I like that idea. It's just the timing, like how long is it going to take for that to happen? But I have that other money that I can use to do other things in the meantime. You know, the $2,500 while I'm waiting that to happen. Now I have 3 contracts, right? Because I have 300 shares that I can space out, which is what I did. I did a 1-week contract, which paid me $200, not a lot of money, premium. I did one that expired in January 20th, 2023, which paid me about $1,000. Okay, so I got to tie that up for a few months. And then I had one for the year and a half, I think it was, that paid me $2,500. So those premiums are mine to keep, but my money is tied up in those contracts, right? It's like if I want to sell you a property and you say, hey, I'll give you a $10,000 deposit and I want to contract with you that I have 30 days to close, right, for example. Well, I can't sell it under from you, like from under you, because I have a contract with you and I have money, collateral, you know, like tied up into the contract. So you have 30 days to close, or you could lose your $10,000, right? And I could sell the property to somebody else. So to me, that's how I look at these contracts. They're like little businesses, little business enterprises that I run, right, for some money, whether they're hundreds of dollars or thousands of dollars, and in some cases, not for me, they could be millions of dollars, right? But I've definitely done them for tens of thousands of dollars, never hundreds of thousands. I've never gone that high. But I want to win more than I lose. But what happens when you get into these different situations? Now, here's what happened. Now, Coinbase yesterday popped. It did pop. It did go up where I was like, oh, it did what I thought it would do. So it went from in the low 60s, and the last time I checked, it was at over $78 a share. So it went back to my over my price of what I own them for. Now, I have those shares in Robinhood, which the market doesn't open until 9 o'clock. As I'm doing this, it's 8 in the morning. So there's really nothing I can do, even if I wanted to, if those shares were available at 9 o'clock in that account, because different platforms offer different time frames. I think Weeble's at 4 in the morning, I believe. And I think like Thinkorswim, TD Ameritrade is like 7 a.m. is when you can actually trade those shares, or put them out there in the market. So I have to wait. I would have to wait if I said I just want to get rid of them, free up the cash, and move on to something else, right? If I wanted to do that, or I want to get rid of 100 shares. But because I have them in 3 contracts, I can't sell them even if I could, even if it was available, even if the time frame was right now. They said, oh, you could trade at 8 in the morning, and I wanted to just unload those shares, whether it was at $75 or $85. I wouldn't be able to anyway, because my contracts are preventing me from doing that. So at 9:30, which is with any platform, that's when you can trade, an option contract, is when I have to wait, to actually do that. So I don't know what the market will be at 9:30 in the morning. But even then, I have to reevaluate, all right, what do I want to do? Because when I sell any of those contracts, if I want to release the equity, release the shares, I'd either have to buy another 100, right? Or I would have to, buy back my contract, right? Because I sold a covered call. So I'd have to buy back one of those contracts, or all 3 of the contracts. And it would cost me my original premium that I collected. I'd have to give it back. Plus, the premium has gone up. So anything over what I paid, I'm going to lose. So I could lose, $500. I could lose $5,000. And then I have to mitigate okay, well, if it's trading at $80 a share, I'm going to have to, and if I'm going to lose $3,000, I'm going to give you an example. If I was to lose $3,000 to buy back those contracts, to release the shares for me to sell or do whatever I want with, I'm going to lose $3,000 from my buying power account to get those shares back. Now, what could happen is it could drop right from $80 a share back to $60. Now I lost the $3,000 buying power. Right, like I lost my premium, plus I paid an extra $3,000 in that example, and then all of a sudden the shares drop, and I'm right back where I started. If I didn't time it right, if I didn't do it, I mean, it could go up, it could shoot up to $100, right? But you don't know. All you can do is base it on probabilities of what might happen. So you're going to make a decision on how you're going to do that. So what I try to do is say, like, all right, what a worst case scenario, what's the best case scenario? Does that make sense? Worst case scenario, what's the best case scenario? So if at 9:30 you're in this similar situation, you're like, okay, the shares, I think they might go up higher. I think they might be trending up. Whether I stay in it for 5 more minutes or 5 more days or 5 more months, I just want to get my shares back. So you have to be okay with paying that premium, right, and paying the extra price. And then granted, if you own it for 78 and it's trading at 88, you're going to make $1,000. So if you paid $2,000, you're going to be down $1,000. If the premium is $1,000 and you're going to lose $1,000, right, to buy the contract back, and then you're going to gain $1,000, and you're basically breaking even. So however the math works out, there's all these different variations of what the premium is and how much over the price per share is that you own it for, and how many shares you have. I guess that will factor in scaling that win or loss. And then you might say, okay, at the end of the day, I'm only losing $500, and I'd be okay with just losing the $500, because the downside is it could go all the way back to 40, and this market is, for me, I'm telling you what I'm thinking, this market is very uncertain. And if it goes back down to $60 or $40, I mean, I'm okay with buying back in that range, but I don't want to own them at $70, $80, $90 and drop all the way there, because it could take months, if not longer, before the market gets better, right? Because if there's a pop in Bitcoin for Coinbase, of course, the stuff going on with Ethereum, the Ethereum merge, all that is going to affect the price action. So if you are locked into your shares, you got to kind of math out all those different scenarios and be okay with it, not just expect an upside, right? Like you could say, I have a price target, but there's no guarantees, and once you get locked in, you're back to the corner. Your options are less than they were, when you're just like, hey, I own the shares, I just own the shares, and if it goes to zero, then I lose. But that's if it goes to zero, and you got to think of what's the probabilities of it going to zero, and do I need the money, and am I in margin? If you're in margin, then you could get a margin call, and if you get a margin call, that means that if you own the shares for whatever the price is, and that goes up well over what you have available in that account, you either got to sell the shares, or you have to put more money in, right, to offset the margin call. And that's in any account, any brokerage account. So, oh man, that's not very good. I'm almost done. If you're kind of calculating that and you're trying to figure out, Jamie, what's the best case for me? I'm stuck. I'm not sure what to do. I would just say that look at your time frames. If you don't need the money, like if the money that you had invested, if it does, it's just like any business venture or anything else that you've done in life, where you're like, hey, I took a chance. If you're taking a chance with everything you got, then that's going to be a lesson learned. And I've made some of those, right? But if I said, okay, from the very beginning, I was okay with if it went to zero. If the shares went to zero, then that's in this case, if Coinbase went bankrupt, which is a possibility, it could happen, especially if they keep having quarter earnings where they're losing $1 billion. But if it went to zero, then my shares are worthless and it doesn't matter. But if it goes between 40 and 60 and 100 and 150 and 80 and whatever those ranges are over whatever time frame that is, I don't really care because I'm like, I own the 100 or 1,000 shares or whatever I have, and it never mattered to me. Not that it didn't matter, but I was always okay from the very beginning of it going to zero. Okay, and if you own the shares, the only time you're ever going to make money or lose money is when you sell them. So if it is at $20 a share and you own it for $70 a share, then you're going to take the loss. But you might have sold covered calls, or you might have sold, you could have sold covered calls along the way, whether it was weekly, monthly, or annually, along that time frame, and built up money. Like I had $11,000 in side money and buying power, whatever you want to call it, premiums that I collected, that kind of offset whatever happened. Because I'm like, well, worst case scenario, excuse me, it goes to zero, and then I'm out $30,000, right? If I own 300 shares at $78 a share, and I went to zero, 80 times 3 is $24,000. I think that's my math right. So worst case scenario is I lose $24,000 if I went bankrupt, and I made $11,000 in premiums, so really I lost $14,000, right? But if it never goes to zero and it just bounces between 40 or 30 or 50, and I keep getting to that number where I eventually surpass the $24,000, then I won't care, because I'm like, I'm playing with the house money now. I'm never gonna like, I got the 24,000. So even if it goes to zero, if it goes bankrupt, I already collected the premiums and $24,000. That makes sense to you guys. And that example, it doesn't have to be that. It could be any company, any premium, any time frame. It's just the math will work out how it works out. But I will always try to do that, and then I'll say at some point, okay, if I have 300 shares in that example, maybe I want to let 100 of them go and take that and get into something else, right? And it's back to that thing where Kevin O'Leary talked about the 20% in a sector and 5% in a stock. Whatever your terms are, whatever your rules of trading are, whether you're a day trader, which I'm not, or a swing trader, or an investor, where you just kind of manage your portfolio. If you're investing in stocks and options and cryptocurrencies, basically just stocks and cryptocurrencies, and you're watching price action, and you have a horizon of 5 years or 10 years, then along the way, it's like, hey, I just want to keep winning. And as these companies come down, maybe I just dollar cost average on companies that I want to own long term. But your money should be earning you money, regardless. If you're going backwards, and you got to rethink things and say, okay, it's okay if there's a dip, but long term meaning, is it a week, a month, a year, or 5 years, or whatever that time is? Do I think I'm going to come out way ahead in the grand scheme of things? And that's how I look at each company I'm getting into. Is I try to look at what's my goal here, what's my target? Do I have a plan? And a lot of the guys that trade, whether they're day traders or swing traders or whatever, investors, most of them will say you got to have a plan. You have to have a strategy. You don't just want to go in blind, right? Like if you go to the casino, then you're just going to go in and throw some money into a slot machine and like, oh, come on, baby, and you're hoping you hit a jackpot. Then you're probably better off just doing that. If you're playing the stock market, you're investing, you're trying to get your money to work for you in companies. You know what I mean? There's no company involved in that slot machine that you're banging, coins into, or $100 bills, hoping to get rich, hoping to make money. Chances are that's why they say house always wins. You're going to lose. But if you're buying into companies that you believe in, like fill in the blank, whatever company it is, and you think, I think this company over the next 5-10 years is not going to go belly up. I mean, granted, there's things that happen, but I want to try to make some money along the way. Okay, I hope that helps. This is a longer video, almost 25 minutes, but a lot of information. If you have any thoughts or anything that I can help you with, I kind of rambled on there, but I hope that's helped. I'll see you guys tomorrow. Have a great day.